So this is a question that's commonly seen on third grade math assessments, and it involves comparing 4 sets of fractions. Now, when students are in third grade, they will always receive models when they are looking at fractions. So they will always have these pictures here. So we're going to talk about the several ways that we can compare these sets of fractions. This question is asking which correctly compares the fractions represented by the shaded regions of each circle. So what that means is we're figuring out which of these is the correct comparison. So we need to actually compare all 4 sets and see which one is true. So we're going to start by looking at set A. And for this one, we're going to start by looking at the model that's given to us, because I can clearly tell in set A that 3/4 has more of the circle shaded than 3/8 does. So in this case, I can just tell by looking at it that 3/4 is greater than, not equal to, 3/8. Now another way that I could look at that is because they have the same numerator, they both have 3's as the numerator, we could just look at those denominators. And I can see, well, one of them is broken into 4 parts and one is broken into 8 parts. Now a circle that's broken into 4 parts is going to have larger pieces than the same size circle that's broken into 8 parts. And so I can tell, well, if I have 3 of my large 4ths shaded versus 3 of my small 8ths shaded, that 3/4 is going to cover a bigger area than 3/8. Now, so I know that that one is not true because they are not equal. So I would just go ahead and cross that one out so I don't confuse myself. Now let's look at set B. So set B shows that 2/3 is equal to 8/12. Now these models show us pictures that look very similar to each other. My circle for 2/3 looks very similar to my circle for 8/12. So this is a case where I might want to cross multiply these 2 fractions, because that's going to help me get an exact answer for if they are actually equal or if one is greater. And so the way that we do that is we would write each fraction, so 2/3 and 8/12. And when we cross multiply, we always cross multiply bottom to top. So I'm taking the denominator of one fraction and I'm multiplying it by the numerator of the other fraction. So 3 times 8, that's 24. And I would write that up top here. And then I do the same thing. It's called cross multiplying because we're moving across the fractions. So now I'm going to do 12 times 2, and that also equals 24. And 24 and 24 are the same number, so they are equal, meaning that these fractions are indeed equal. Hooray! But we can't stop there. We have to make sure that that's the only set that is true. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to check set C. Okay? Set C says 3/6 is greater than 2/3. So in this case, when I'm looking at the fractions, I can see that 3/6 is the same as half of my circle. And I can see that because of the straight line going through the middle of the circle. But I could also tell that because I know that 3, our numerator, is half of 6, our denominator. So I know that that's equal to 1/2. Now 2/3, well, if I think about what half of 3 is, half of 3 would be 1 and 1/2, right? Because 1 1/2 plus 1 1/2 equals 3. 2 is more than 1 and 1/2. So 2/3 would be more than half of the circle. And we can also tell that by drawing a line through the center of the circle and seeing that there's more than half shaded. So I can tell here that 3/6 is only half of my circle, but 2/3 is more than half, and so in fact 2/3 is actually greater than 3/6, making this one false. Now let's look at our last set, set D. Okay, set D is 8/12 is greater than 5/6. Now for this one, it also might be difficult to tell just by looking at the picture. So for this one, I'm actually going to draw my own picture, and I'm going to draw a number line to show this. And when I do that, I'm going to be drawing two number lines as straight as I can and lined up with each other. So I can see that they start and end at the same spot. And then I'll draw my 0 and 1 whole, because every mark that I make is going to show a fraction between 0 and 1. And I'll do that for the one down below as well. And the top one I'm going to use to show 8/12. So I'm going to have to split my number line into 12 equal parts. And I'm going to do the best that I can here. So okay, there we have our 12 equal parts. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8/12. And I'm going to stop there. And the number line down below I'm going to use to show 5/6. So I'm going to split my number line into 6. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can see that 5/6 is much closer to 1 than 8/12 is. So I can see that actually 5/6 is greater than 8/12, which also makes this one false. So then the only set that shows a true fraction would be set B, and I would select that as my answer.